sound right, is it? Nah, you guys probably can't even hear the mute. Well, I don't know if you can even hear the music. For some reason, it's coming through the speakers, and it's not supposed to be, so I don't know if you can even hear that properly. But anyway, hey, as always on this show, we're going to roll with the technical difficulties and just do what we can. Hello, friends. Welcome in to Talking Sports at Work, special NFL Mock Draft Edition. And I know what you must be thinking, what could you have done? How good must you have been to earn 2 episodes in consecutive days? And, well, the truth is, I ran out of time yesterday. Spent probably too much time talking about a former Tennessee quarterback who shall remain nameless, and as well as my own personal life and job situation. And so we didn't get into hardly any of the NFL stuff that I wanted to discuss, or any of the basketball stuff that I wanted to discuss. But today we are going to get to at least the NFL aspect of it, because we are going to try something a little bit different here and just go over now, friends of the show, fans, listeners, viewers, whatever, and people who know me may remember last year, I did I did mock draft specials on the YouTube channel. I did part of one. I did the first 10 picks for this year as well on the YouTube channel. I'm going to continue to try to do that, but we're a week away from the draft, and I'm so very short on time that I don't know how much I'll be able to get done. Hopefully I'll be able to get at least one full mock draft on the YouTube channel before it actually arrives. But today we're going to do one full first round, all 32 picks of the first round on the podcast. And now that's going to mean that I'm going to have to be probably pulling over and taking breaks quite a bit to remind myself of who I selected. But yeah, so anyway, what I did, and this is the same thing pretty much that I did last year, is I just used one of these mock draft simulators. They're really fun tools. I mean, I do play with them even when I'm not doing something like this. And I just selected all 32 teams and did it, what I think these teams should do, or what I think they will do. Now, that's in itself maybe a sort of debate. I think really when you're looking at mock draft, or when you're creating a mock draft, it is my opinion that you should be trying to determine what the team will do more than what you think they should do. If you're trying to accurately predict what's going to happen, you gotta try to look at things from, the perspectives of these GMs. And that's, even for, I'm sure, the experts who live and breathe this stuff and get paid lots of money to do so, it's hard to try to do that from and take the perspective of 32 different organizations that have, a variety of people involved in this, from owners to GMs to assistant GMs and scouts and coaches, and, but I think we can get a sense, based on sort of the prevailing notions of how things are going, that, what these teams can, will most likely do in these scenarios. And anyway, I'm just kind of rambling, I guess, right now. But we're going to dive right in. The first pick, I don't even think, you don't have to think about that one. We know what we're going to do. But I'm going to take one quick break, try to remind myself of who I took, in the first few picks, and then I'll be right back. Alright, welcome back, friends. So, the Tennessee Titans have been on the clock for some time now. Seems like they have been maybe overthinking it, in my humble opinion, given the state of the roster, given what's needed, and given what's available. Because, it seems like they haven't even really been thinking that much about who to take at number 1 as much as what to do with the number 1 pick. They've been continuously talking about the potential of trading the pick and seemingly trying to drive up the price, while, to me, I've said all along, it's obvious what you need to do here. And now it seems like they have listened to me and come around to my way of thinking, and it's not like I'm, obviously the only person saying this, or they ever would listen to anything I say anyway. But with the first pick, the Tennessee Titans take the guy who, look, I don't want to put too much on him, but could hopefully be close to the savior of this franchise. This team has not had a franchise quarterback, a true franchise quarterback, since I was a kid, going back to the days of Steve McNair. And that's one interesting little element here, is that that's a comparison that I think is kind of accurate for a player comp. Looking at Cam Ward, he might not be quite as thick as McNair, but he plays a similar way. He's got that gunslinger stuff to him. He's got the rocket arm. He's got the athleticism. There's a lot of McNair in Cam Ward. And you guys have heard me talk about it. I love this kid. The more I've seen, the more I've heard, the more interviews and things I've listened to him, I've just really come to love this kid. And you never know. The draft is a crapshoot, right? Even with as advanced as technology and analytics and these predictive stuff that we have now, even with as much as we have available to us, the draft is still every bit as much of a crapshoot as it ever was. But it feels to me like, and the consensus is, that Cam Ward is the one guy in this draft that seems to be a true, top 5 pick, at the quarterback position. A guy worthy of the number 1 overall pick and a potential franchise quarterback. So, I've talked about that ad nauseum, I'm sure, for the last few months. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that. We'll move on to number 2, because this is where it really starts to get interesting, I think. At number 2, I really feel like it is more likely than most that this could be Shedeur Sanders. But in the end, it doesn't seem like the Browns are enamored by him, and it doesn't seem as though they are in the state of urgency that maybe some other teams are to get a quarterback. And so I'm going to give them the best player available, the best player probably in the draft overall, the best athlete in the draft, and that's Travis Hunter out of Colorado, who can do a number of things for them. I think he's probably going to be a wide receiver primarily. I think that's where he would provide the most value to this team, but they'll probably let him play, some as a nickel corner, bring him in for packages on defense. But, that's what we keep hearing from him, is that he would rather quit football than not be allowed to play both sides of the ball. And so, they're going to have to give him a shot. But no matter what, this dude is just special. I mean, generational, that term is thrown around way too often in sports terms nowadays, but it applies here. And so then we move on to the number 3 pick. This is the New York Giants. Now, I remain steadfast in what I have been saying about this for weeks. What I said on my YouTube video of the first 10 picks, I'm standing by it. Even though it seems like the prevailing winds have shifted and no one thinks they're going to do this, I think they take Shedeur Sanders at number 3, and I think he is deserving of that pick. Look, the guy is everything that these experts, that the media people, the front office people, the GMs, everything that they say that they are looking for in a quarterback draft, in a quarterback prospect, that's what he does well. All of it. I mean, what do you always hear you're looking for? How quickly does he process information? How quickly does he get the ball out? How accurate is he? How tough is he? How, reliable is he? How much of a leader and a professional is he? All this stuff that you always hear, that's him. Those are his strengths. Now, what are his weaknesses? His weaknesses are he's not an elite athlete. He's not going to be running all over the field. Although I think he's a little bit better of an athlete than maybe he gets credit for. I don't think he's Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins. I see him more in terms of athleticism. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be this, but I see him more as like a Joe Burrow type. He is so great at navigating the pocket, which is one of Joe Burrow's biggest strengths. And any Titans fan, especially, and probably any fan of an AFC North team as well, will tell you how frustrating it is playing against Joe Burrow, not just because of the throws, but because it's 3rd and 8 and you think you've got him, and here he goes scampering for 11 yards. That, I think, is something that Shedeur Sanders would be able to do at the next level. I think he's athletic and smart enough to be able to do that. But anyway, so the supposed weaknesses in his game, he's not super athletic. He doesn't have a rocket for an arm. These are the things that you hear that you don't hear them talk about. It's almost like teams show their true colors in some instance and don't necessarily practice what they preach when it comes to drafting quarterbacks, because they get enamored with these traits, right? That's what we hear about, the traits, the ceiling, the physical tools, all this stuff that Will Levis had, that Anthony Richardson had in spades, that Jalen Milroe has. But when you're talking about what you're looking for, when they say what they're looking for, that's what Shedeur Sanders has. He doesn't have that stuff that they all get enamored with and fall in love with and think that they could be the ones to get the most out of him and think that they could be the ones to shape him and use those physical tools and turn him into something special. He doesn't have that stuff. But man, he does everything you want an NFL quarterback to do. He is accurate, he is smart, he is a professional, and he's reliable. He's tough. He's going to be on the field for you. So, and given and specifically in reference to the Giants, I think they can say whatever they're going to, you have to take anything you hear from teams during this time of year with a massive grain of salt. Because a big part of this is misdirection. A big part of this is putting smoke out there and not letting people know your true intentions. And I've said all along, I think the teams that are happy, the people who are happiest to hear about all this bad stuff about Sanders and him potentially sliding in the draft, I think that the people who are happiest to hear that, and maybe at least partially responsible, are teams like the Giants and the Saints and maybe even the Raiders and those teams that are, might be looking to take him. And so, given the mandate that we heard, no matter what Joe Schoen now says, we heard the owners say they have to get their franchise quarterback in this draft. I mean, in no uncertain terms. So, given that that's already been put out there, and given that there are really two guys, one, maybe two, there's one guy who everybody feels really confident about, and then another guy that everybody feels might be that, I just don't see how they don't take him there at 3. Now, they've got a lot of holes on their roster. Abdul Carter sitting there, blah, 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 blah. No, it doesn't, you really believe Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston is going to lead you to more than 5-6 wins? Either of those guys is going to have you outside of the top 10 next year? No. I mean, they probably will have you good enough to where you're not picking number 1 overall. But is this really? I mean, we see how that worked out for them this year, winning that final game of the season and handing the Titans the number 1 pick. Or was it I think it was the game before, it was the penultimate game of the season. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But anyway, I just see this as, I think the Giants are doing a good job of hiding their true intentions. And I do think that they will take Shedeur Sanders at number 3. Now, obviously, I don't know any more than anybody, and in fact, I know a lot less than most of these plugged-in, insiders and experts. But that's just the sense I get, and like I said, you can't believe anything that they say at this time of year. But given their needs, given their situation, given the thin ice that these guys are on in terms of, the GM and coach, yeah, I think Shedeur Sanders just makes a ton of sense right here. Then we move on to number 4, and I guarantee you Mike Vrabel is thrilled to have Abdul Carter fall right in his lap. Now, I honestly am not as high on him as everybody else is. I think he could be Micah Parsons. That's his ceiling, but I'm not confident that that's what he's going to be. But I do think he's a very, very, very good prospect. And, the consensus is that there are basically 2 elite blue chip prospects, and he's one of them. So I don't think the Patriots even think about this. If this is how it shakes out, they run that card up there, and they are happy to do so. And then at number 5 for the Jaguars, so far I've remembered all this, but that's, it's only 5 picks. I'm just going to give them the same that I've seen literally, I think, every single mock draft I've seen over the last couple of weeks is giving them. And that's the defensive lineman out of Michigan, Mason Graham. It's just an obvious need, an obvious fit, and a very good talent there at number 5. And so there's really not that much to think about with this one either. Now at number 6, this is one that if you watched the YouTube episode, you'll know how I feel about this, because I've seen over and over these mock drafts giving them Ashton Jeanty at number 6. I think that's ridiculous. I do. And again, I know you're supposed to try to think about what they're going to do and maybe not what they should do, but I've got to think that the Raiders leadership has enough sense to not think that a running back is the right decision here. You take a running back when, if you ended up high in the draft, but the rest of your roster is pretty good, or, you're in a situation like the Eagles were, where you've got everything in place and there's a really good running back in free agency, or like the Ravens were last year. But, adding a running back when you're really not close to actually competing is just stupid to me. It's what the Giants did a few years ago and wasted the first few years of Saquon Barkley's career. So I don't get that. A guy I do think makes a ton of sense here is Will Johnson. It's a position of need, and he is a guy that reminds me of the Legion of Boom corners back from the glory days of Pete Carroll. And so that is the pick that to me just makes all the sense in the world. Now, for a while, he had been considered a no-brainer top 10 pick, and then he started to fall recently, and you'll see, I think most mocks now have him outside of the top 10, but I think him being there for Pete Carroll at a position of need, and the kind of player we know he likes at that position, and a guy with an elite ceiling, yeah, I think that just makes a ton of sense right there. I'm going to take a quick break because I forgot. Oh, wait, no, actually, no, I remember. Okay, so the Jets are at number 7. And this was another one that just makes sense to me. Armand Membou is just a ridiculously talented right tackle. He's a guy that didn't get a lot of attention up until recently, really. And I know I've said that I'm not a big believer in taking purely right tackles this high in the draft, but given the needs of the Jets and the position that they're in, and the fact that they're likely going to be a run-heavy team and maybe an option team with Justin Fields at quarterback, given that they hired a defensive-minded head coach who is going to want to control the ball, I think this just makes a lot of sense, not to mention the fact that they drafted Olu Fashanu in the first round last year to be their left tackle, their franchise left tackle. And given the talent and potential of both of these guys, you put Membou on there, that's your bookends for the next decade, maybe. You've got two of the most important positions on the offense taken care of. And when you've got an elite pair of tackles, young tackles that you can now, that's just, I'm a big believer in building the offensive line, that's a huge priority for any team. And it's something that the Titans have had throughout their history up until the last few years. And I think they might now have, hopefully, with Dan Moore and J.C. Latham, if Dan Moore can continue to do what he's done, and which is improve each year. But anyway, I just think this makes a lot of sense for the Jets to get this uber talented monster of a man to put on the right side, put Fashanu on the left side. You've got your bookends, you've got protection for your quarterback, and you've got a team that can now focus on running the ball control, and it makes sense to me. It's building inside out, the smart way to try to build this franchise, which I get is completely, that just in and of itself is counter to the Jets' usual way of doing things, but I'm going to give them Membou here at 7. All right, now I actually am going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back. All right, welcome back, friends. So, moving on to the 8th pick, that is the Carolina Panthers. This is another one that I'm staying true to what I had in that mock draft I did on the YouTube channel a week or so ago, and I'm giving them Tetairoa McMillan, the consensus top receiver in the draft. He's a big body, reliable target for Bryce Young that I still think they're going to, try to build with him and hope that he is their guy. I still think he could be that, but good Lord, he needs people to throw the ball to outside of a 30-whatever-year-old Adam Thielen. So this one just makes sense to me. He's big body, reliable. Bryce Young can just, if he sees man-to-man coverage, just throw it up to him and trust that he's going to get it. This just makes sense to me. And I know that some people will think that that's high for him, and I get that. And I've even said I'm not personally a huge fan of his, but I think given the need and the fit, it just makes sense. Then you move to number 9. Now, this one, honestly, I was unsure about. I went back and forth on, and I'm still a little bit uncertain about which way this would go. Oh man, I just saw a notification. Lee Corso's finally retiring. Well, good for him. And honestly, it's time. It was getting sad. It really was sad watching him on College Game Day. But good for him. He's had a hell of a career as a coach and a broadcaster. Just a little interruption here. Yeah, good for Lee Corso. That's awesome. I mean, it's not awesome that he's getting so old and everything, but congratulations to him, as if he'd ever hear this. Okay, so we're moving on to 9. This is the Saints. Now, the last one I did before they announced this Derek Carr injury, and since then, everyone has had them taking a quarterback, and the majority of the mock drafts have them taking Shedeur Sanders at number 9. But again, I have him already off the board here. So what do the Saints do if they have now this big obvious need at the most important position in the sport, but the two guys that are worthy of a top 10 pick are no longer there? Well, I think in this position they would be looking to trade back if possible. There are always teams, even if it's not for a quarterback, there are always going to be teams calling to try to get up and get a guy in the top 10. But I didn't do any trades. I sometimes do, but I didn't do any trades in this mock draft, and I have them here because if there is a trade available and this is how it shakes out and Sanders is already gone, I do think the Saints would be looking, like I said, to trade back if possible, acquire more picks, and maybe add one of these quarterbacks later in the first round. But in this instance, without any trades in the mock draft, I didn't know. They've got a lot of need. They've got some solid players, but this one's a weird one. I mean, the most obvious thing, again, is quarterback, but they're not going to take Jackson Dart 9th overall, or Jalen Milroe, they're not. So I just decided to give them the player that I believe is the best one still on the board, and that's the tight end Tyler Warren, who is a playmaker, and it is a position where they really could use some help. And depending on, if they stay here and get a quarterback in the second round, that would be something that their new young quarterback would be very, very thrilled to have. Would be this uber athletic, super high ceiling, super reliable, super versatile weapon of a tight end in Tyler Warren. And even if they have to try Spencer Rattler out there, he's going to be definitely thrilled to have Tyler Warren on the team. So yeah, and I know that most people would say, well, Ashton Jeanty is the best player on the board. Well, I've made my thoughts clear about a running back for teams that are not good. Taking one early doesn't make sense. Now, with that being said, the Bears are a team that actually have a pretty decent roster. They've done a great job in filling needs and adding talent in free agency, building around their young quarterback, and I do think that this is where Ashton Jeanty would go at number 10. And one of the biggest reasons for this is because of their new coach, Ben Johnson. I mean, he was most successful once they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, and he could use this elite 1-2 punch of two great running backs, and now you add Ashton Jeanty to be his Jahmyr Gibbs to the DeAndre Swift, I guess the David Montgomery comp, and the Bears could be actually pretty dangerous this year. It really all hinges on two things for them, and that's the coach and the quarterback, both unproven. Ben Johnson was a tremendous offensive coordinator, but none of us know for sure how he's going to be as a head coach. But he could be really good, and I lean towards I think he will be good, and I lean towards I think Caleb Williams will be good. And so this is a spot where I think you add the best running back in the draft, one of the best overall players in the draft, regardless of position, because you've already got your roster in a pretty good spot, and you can add a guy like this, and it just makes sense. Then, moving on to number 11. Now, this is another one I was kind of went back and forth on and debated on. Oh, actually, let me stop for a minute, because there's a player that still has not gone, and I want to bring up a point about most of the mock drafts right now do not have Sanders going. They have it Ward and then some combination of Carter and Hunter at 2 and 3. And then most of the ones I have seen that are like that have the Patriots then taking Will Campbell at number 4. That is not going to happen. I'm just telling you right now. And the reason why is because of Mike Vrabel's recent experience with a player very, very similar. And what do we hear about Will Campbell? He's super polished, really talented, high floor guy. He's going to be good, but can he play tackle, or is he going to be a guard? And that's mostly because of his arm length. Who is that? Well, that's Peter Skoronski, who the Titans selected, was it 11th or 12th overall? I think it was 11th. I can't remember. But a couple of years ago, they spent that high pick on a guy that I know they hoped was going to be their left tackle of the future, and he ended up, now being a pretty good guard. I'm not saying that it's a one-for-one comparison that Will Campbell is Peter Skoronski, but the exact same things you hear about Campbell are the exact same things that you heard about Peter Skoronski. Great player, but can he play tackle in the NFL because of his arm length? I don't think Mike Vrabel's going to take that chance again, especially not at 4 overall. And so that is also why I still have Will Campbell, even though he's kind of the consensus top offensive lineman in this draft. I still have him on the board at 11, and he's going to be on the board for a little while, in my opinion. And this is a spot where he could go, given all the needs at 11 that the 49ers have. They lost so many players, and it kind of feels like they went in with this window trying to win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy on his rookie contract, and they couldn't get it done. And now it's time to pay the bill, basically. They're no longer going to have a quarterback on a rookie contract, and so all these great high-paid players they had, guys like Charvarius Ward and Deebo Samuel, and they're losing all these players because they don't have a choice. It's the salary cap league. So there are a number of ways they could go in this. They for a team that's expected to be pretty good, they have a lot of needs to fill. I'm going to give them the guy who's the best edge rusher on the board, and that's, in my opinion, Mykel Williams. Now, I know that most people seem to have his teammate, Jalen Walker, ranked ahead of him. I don't necessarily agree with that, though, and the biggest reason for it is because I think Jalen Walker, Mykel Williams is more of your prototype edge defender. He's like 6'4", 6'5". He's got the body type, the athleticism. Jalen Walker is a guy who might end up being more of an off-ball linebacker. He played both in college, similar to like Abdul Carter had before, like Micah Parsons played off-ball linebacker. But I think he's only like 6'1", and he just doesn't fit the the prototype of an NFL defensive end, outside linebacker, edge defender. Mykel Williams does. And given that they're both sort of very close in terms of potential and projections, I think he's going to be taken ahead of his teammate, and I think he could be paired on the other side of Nick Bosa. That could be a force for a team that we know prioritizes the defensive line. And so I've got the 49ers making an upgrade there and creating maybe one of the better edge defender duos in the league with Mykel Williams at 11. Now, with all that being said, you go to 12, I think Jalen Walker would actually make a lot of sense for the Cowboys because they need a lot of help on defense. They need a guy with that kind of versatility. And Jalen Walker is similar to what they already have with Micah Parsons, but if you have two of those guys now, two of those guys that could either line up on the edge or that could move around, that could line up off the ball and play linebacker, this is a team that we know was just totally incapable of stopping the run last year. Jalen Walker, I think, could help them in that, and he could rush the passer just as an edge defender, or you could line him up at different places and help him blitz. And now offensive lines have to worry about not only Micah Parsons keeping up with where he is, but you've got two of those guys now. So I think this would make a ton of sense for the Cowboys at number 12. Then at number 13, this one felt kind of obvious to me. The Dolphins just lost, I can't even remember his name. They lost their left tackle. He just retired. Good Lord, that's going to drive me nuts now. But anyway, I'm going to give them the guy I believe is the best surefire left tackle in the draft, and that's Kelvin Banks out of Texas. Even though, again, I know that most people have Will Campbell mocked ahead of him, I've said my piece on that. I think Kelvin Banks is a guy who is an NFL left tackle. Campbell might be, but Kelvin Banks is. And Terron Armstead, that's who it is. And I think there's actually a lot of similarities between him and Armstead, actually. So I think this pick just makes a ton of sense. You've got a really expensive, injury-prone quarterback back there. Let's get the best left tackle in the draft there at 13, and I think they'd be very happy about it. Now, at 14, here's another one that I kind of debated on because I thought this might be a spot for Will Campbell. Because the Colts need help at a variety of spots on the offensive line. Some mocks have them taking a receiver, but the majority of mock drafts I've seen have them taking a tight end. Now, in the majority of those, Tyler Warren is still available. He is not in mine, but I think Colston Loveland is pretty close in terms of, they might not be the same player, but just in terms of what they could bring and their talent. I think he could be a Pro Bowl caliber tight end, and that's something that the Colts really need right now. Now, everything about the Colts' future now hinges on Anthony Richardson, who most of you probably know my feelings. I am not a fan. I was never a fan. I could not believe he went 4th overall. But, hey, let's see. I mean, this is kind of a make-or-break year. If he continues to look the way he has and look the way basically he did at Florida, which did not ever look like an NFL quarterback to me, then they're going to be having to move on. But if they are able to turn him into an NFL quarterback, I mean, and I get it, they were enamored by those traits. He looks like Cam Newton. He's got the athleticism. He's got a rocket for an arm. But anyway, I'm getting off topic here. Giving him a really good Pro Bowl caliber, maybe even all-pro caliber tight end, rookie tight end, to go along with, I think, an underrated receiver core there, can only help his development and help his chances. So that's who's going at number 14. At number 15, I think the Falcons are thrilled to see the guy I see as the next, maybe the highest ceiling edge rusher outside of Abdul Carter on the board, and that's James Pierce. And maybe call me a homer with this. I know that everybody's had him consistently falling down draft boards. I don't see him falling anywhere close to where a lot of mocks have him, which is like 32 to the Eagles or late 20s. I don't think teams are going to let this kind of player, this kind of talent, fall that far. I think the Falcons are thrilled to see him sitting there for them at 15, and they go on up there and they grab him because it's a need for them, and he just has potential through the roof. And speaking of potential, but maybe definitely didn't perform up to it in college, you've got the Cardinals at number 16, and they also need an edge defender. Shemar Stewart, I don't know how I feel about him, honestly. Look, James Pierce, you can make, I guess, sort of a comparison that James Pierce didn't live up to expectations, but going into last year, he was projected as maybe the number 1 overall pick in this draft. Shemar Stewart was not that. And James Pierce, I think, does not get enough credit. Yeah, he didn't put up the sack numbers that a lot of guys did, but he was like, I think, number 2 in the country in pressure rate. He did a lot of things that edge defenders don't always do, which is picking off the ball, dropping into coverage, making big plays on huge runs, shooting the gaps on, I remember that Florida game where he basically won the game for us on that goal line stand. And on the other hand, Shemar Stewart has had, I think, 6.5 total sacks in his career, and just for whatever reason, despite the ridiculous physical tools, didn't really produce at that level. But we know how NFL front offices, GMs, coaches work. Somebody's going to believe I can get that out of him, and I can help him maximize his potential. And so in this mock draft, I've got the Cardinals going that way. Now, at first, I had them going a different way. I think, did I have them taking Jahdae Brown before? I had them taking, or it might have been Matthew Golden. I can't remember. But the way this draft board has fallen and given their needs, I'm going to go have them take a chance on Shemar Stewart. And if they're able to do it, and I mean, remember, this is the former Eagles defensive coordinator who is their head coach. The Eagles who, were outstanding because of that defensive front. And I think if anybody's going to have the confidence that he can get it out of him, it would be somebody like that. Then you go to number 17, and I think the run on edge rushers continues. Mike Green, not a household name, played for Marshall, but he actually led the FBS in sacks last year. I don't remember what the number was, but he led the FBS in quarterback sacks. The Bengals need all the help they can get on defense, so there are really a number of ways that they could go here. But I think you put him on the other side of Trey Hendrickson, and now you might have a special duo there. Or, given the uncertainty with Trey Hendrickson, he could be his replacement. Or, honestly, he could end up being both. I mean, most likely he would. Even if they manage to get Trey Hendrickson re-signed, he's probably only got a couple more years of elite football left. So then you would have a guy who would be sort of his heir apparent, but for the first year or two would be, hopefully an elite edge presence on the other side of Hendrickson. Now, we move to 18, and the Seattle Seahawks. They have one big obvious need, in my opinion, after trading away DK Metcalf, and that now that Tyler Lockett is, basically just a slot receiver, I think, and, doesn't have that speed that made him so special, and doesn't have Russell Wilson there anymore to, connect on those deep balls. And so I'm going to give them the guy that I believe could be the best receiver in this draft, and that's Matthew Golden. Now, opinions on him vary greatly. I know that, the people are going to say, well, he's only, flown up draft boards after putting up a really good combine performance, and you can't put too much into what they do in shorts and a t-shirt. That's not why I like Matthew Golden. If you watch college football, you will understand why I like Matthew Golden. If you saw what he did at Texas in the last several games of the season, this dude is special, and I really believe he is the best all-around receiver in the game. And honestly, the testing stuff, that surprised me. I don't know. I didn't expect him to be that fast at the combine. I didn't expect him to have 4.3 speed. But, man, he's got that. He tests well on top of the production he had. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he's already gone by this point. But if he falls to the Seahawks there at 18, I think they are thrilled to run that card up there and take him. And then at number 19, this is the same way that I had in my original mock draft, which, just a side note, I know I only put the first 10 picks on the YouTube channel, but I actually did a full first round. I just didn't have time to put it all up there. But this is one that I think the Seahawks pick was the same as well in my last one, but so is the pick I have at 19, just because it makes so much sense. And that's them taking the heir apparent to Lavonte David, the best, pure off-ball linebacker in the draft, which is Jihad Campbell out of Alabama. So I think he's a guy who they could bring in, and for the first year he could play alongside Lavonte David and learn from him, and then sort of, take over in that role as their number one linebacker moving forward. We know that's an important position in Todd Bowles' defense, and it's an important position for the Buccaneers franchise. They have, he's going to have some very big shoes to fill eventually once Lavonte David, finally is too old to do this, but which seems like isn't going to happen because he just continues to be incredible. But yeah, you put him alongside Lavonte David, Todd Bowles is going to be thrilled with that duo, and then eventually he would take over as the number one guy there. I'm going to take one more quick break, and then we'll go forward. Alrighty, friends, welcome back. So, moving on. I had to take a quick break there because I did forget what I had after that. But I refreshed my memory, and we are now at the number 20 pick, right? Number 20. And that is the Denver Broncos. And this one, if you follow stuff, you look at the mock drafts, you can probably guess where I'm going with this one because it just makes sense. And I'm going to tell you, this is one of my favorite players absolutely in the draft, and that's Omarion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina. Now, I don't know that the Broncos are quite to where I think they should be in order to, meet the criteria I mentioned earlier, as far as, you don't want to take a running back in the first round or go spend big on an elite running back unless you have the rest of your team really ready to compete for definitely the playoffs, maybe a Super Bowl, but they're close. They are close, and given how Sean Payton likes to operate, and given that this has been consistently the thing that it sounds like they want in this draft, I think he would be ecstatic to see this guy fall to him there at 20. And I don't even think it's a fall or a reach. I don't even think it's necessarily a fall. I think this is realistically what could happen, and if he is there, what will happen. But, dude, this guy, I honestly believe, could be better than Ashton Jeanty, could be the best running back in the draft, could be a future, superstar, all-pro running back. If you watch this dude at North Carolina, he looks like, and he is, a, pound the ball, thumper, run you over kind of running back, but he's also got surprisingly good hands and good blocking ability for a guy that looks like that and plays like that. I see Bijan Robinson, honestly, when I watch Omarion Hampton. And I think, and there's yet another example of a team that should not have taken a running back that early, and another great running back's rookie contract being wasted. But that's a comp for me, I think, is Bijan Robinson. He's got that sort of size, that speed, that 3-down running back ability. I love this dude. And if he goes to Sean Payton there at the Broncos, that could really be an immediate impact, a guy who could even maybe make the Pro Bowl, rush for over 1,000 yards as a rookie. If this is the way it shakes out, outside of Cam Ward, here would be my offensive rookie of the year front runner, outside of Cam Ward. So, the guy I believe, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Titans fan, I really believe that's, hopefully what's going to happen and what the most likely scenario right now. But outside of Cam Ward, if the Broncos get Omarion Hampton, or really if he goes to any decent team with a good offensive line and a decent quarterback, yeah. So, moving on to number 21. Now, here's another interesting one, right? Because we don't know who's going to be under center right now for the Steelers. They're a good team. As long as that coach is good there, they will always be a good team. But you've got to have a quarterback. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, to me, does not really seem to want to go there. If he did, he would have already signed. Now, maybe there's some reason for it that we don't know quite yet. Maybe there really is some true explanation for the delay. But a week before the draft starts, and they still do not really have a quarterback outside of Mason Rudolph, and they've pushed all their chips into this Aaron Rodgers pot, no, I don't see how this is going to work out well for them at this point. And if they don't get a good quarterback, this could finally be the end of Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. As ridiculous as that sounds, we hear it. We've heard it every year for the last few years now. As we get closer to the end of the season and in the offseason, Steelers fans are mad. A lot of them want rid of him. I'm telling you, if that happens, I hope the Titans immediately fire Brian Callahan and offer him all the money in the world. That's a whole other discussion about I still hope that Brian Callahan could be a good coach. I don't care. Like, if Mike Tomlin's available, I think half the teams in the league would be willing to immediately fire their coach and go get him. But anyway, if he doesn't have a quarterback, what can they really do? Now, the obvious selection here, I shouldn't say obvious, I guess what might, seem like common thinking is the guy who's the third best quarterback, according to most of the experts, is Jackson Dart. I don't agree with that. And honestly, here's another example of recent experience in the draft influencing what a team might do. I think they'll look at him and they'll see Kenny Pickett. I mean, I really do. I think there are a lot of similarities there. He's a guy who who has good, not great physical traits, very successfully ran a really good college offense. He was in that Lane Kiffin RPO offense and very effectively ran it for the most part, except for in big games. I just think they're going to look at him and remember Kenny Pickett, who was that also pick number 21? It was pick 20-something, but I think they're going to look at him and say, no, we're not doing this again. A guy who I do think could be really good, even though opinions on him vary greatly as well, is Tyler Shough. Now, I also think Will Howard it could be really good, and Kyle McCord could be really good. But Tyler Shough looks the part, has all the traits, and if it weren't for the injuries, and I get that that's a factor too, but people who are calling him an injury-prone quarterback, I don't know that that's really accurate, because these weren't like injuries that, it wasn't like consistent ACL tears or soft tissue. It wasn't like recurring stuff. It was like freak stuff that could have happened to anybody. Like he dove at one point and got hit, and that caused an injury. Like, these weren't the kind of injuries that you would label him as an injury-prone quarterback necessarily. But those injuries are the reasons why he's like 24 and still in college. But if it had not been for that, he would already be in the NFL. I do think he could be really good. And I do think if he goes to the definitive solid organization in the NFL and goes to an elite coach like Mike Tomlin and an overrated offensive coordinator who loves to run the ball and is not going to ask him to do too much, and Arthur Smith, that could be a good situation for him. I also think that maybe they look at him and see a little bit of Ben Roethlisberger with the size and the athleticism and the escapability and the rocket arm. And I'm not saying that would necessarily influence the decision, but I'm giving them Tyler Shough out of Louisville. I've explained why. I mean, I think that makes sense. He's smart. He's a veteran. He's going to be able to, effectively run the simple Arthur Smith offense. And I think he could be the guy that could finally be the Steelers' heir to Ben Roethlisberger. So that's my thought there. We move on to number 22. And this was one that I wasn't sure about, because you may have noticed that Will Campbell still has not been drafted in my mock draft. Now, honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. I think someone will have already taken him by now, most likely. But, just looking at the teams and how the picks go and the needs, and again, given the uncertainty about what position he will play in the NFL, I don't think it's at all outside the realm of possibility that he's still sitting there right now. And I think he's going to continue to be sitting there, even though I know that Jim Harbaugh will see him and definitely be very tempted. It's just not a huge need for them right now. They've got 2 elite tackles, and maybe they want to take him and go ahead and put him at guard. That's possible. But in this mock draft, I've got them doing what I believe they should do, and that's taking a wide receiver at number 22 to help their superstar, Justin Herbert, and that's Luther Burden, a guy who I do believe is a first-round receiver. I think Matthew Golden is the best. I think Ted McMillan, even though I worry that he doesn't have the speed to be as great as he can be, or maybe as great as some people think he will be, is probably number 2. And then I have Luther Burden as the 3rd best receiver in this draft. He's a guy who can pretty much do everything. He's great on deep balls. But his biggest strength is you put the ball in his hands. This is a guy who Justin Herbert could throw him screens. They could do reverses. They could go. I would imagine we would see a lot of slants with him, and he can catch the ball, 5 yards past the line of scrimmage and run a 40-yard whatever. I mean, this is a guy who is special with the ball in his hands, but he is also good at tracking the deep ball. He can play inside in the slot. He can play outside. He's just, I think, a complete wide receiver, and is something that Justin Herbert would really, really be happy to have on his team. I probably need to speed up a little bit. So now at number 23, another team that I think is very happy with the way this draft board has shaken out at this point are the Green Bay Packers, because they would run this card up there if Texas cornerback Jahdae Barron is still sitting there. It is a position of need. He is one of the top 2-3 corners in this draft, depending on if you consider Travis Hunter one. And so, something's going on up here. But yeah, this one just makes too much sense, all the sense in the world, and I think they would be thrilled if the draft board shook out this way. Jahdae Barron to the Packers on the other side of Jair Alexander. Yeah, let's go. And then another pick that I think just makes a ton of sense is Malachi Starks to the Vikings. That is a position of need for them now. And we know how Brian Flores is as a defensive coordinator, a defensive play caller, and a guy with the versatility who's just, maybe who is one of the best defensive players in this draft, regardless of position. Just he is. And he's versatile. He's a guy that I think Brian Flores could do a lot of fun things with, and I think they'd be thrilled to add him there at 24. Another team that I think is thrilled, again, with how the draft board has shaken out, this is 3 in a row, are the Houston Texans, because this is where, if Will Campbell's still sitting there, they go get him. They're willing to take a chance on, can he be their new replacement for Laramie Tunsil, or do we have to put him at guard? But no matter where he plays, they need protection. They need help for C.J. Stroud. They had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL last year, even still with having, a Pro Bowler and Laramie Tunsil at the most important position, and then they let him go. So they're, on paper, looks like even worse right now. So yeah, if Will Campbell's still sitting there, they are thrilled to go get him at 25. Now, here's another little interesting one. At 26, the Rams. Now, there are a number of ways that they could go with this pick. They need some help at positions. Wide receiver is sort of could be one, but I think if Golden and McMillan and Burden are off the board, maybe they go get Emeka Egbuka. I don't know, but I just did really what I want to see happen with this pick, and that's Jalen Milroe. Because if there is one person in the NFL who could actually take all these ridiculous tools and traits that Jalen Milroe has and get the most out of them, it's Sean McVay, right? I mean, maybe Kevin O'Connell, but yeah, I mean, it's got to be Sean McVay. And so I look at Jalen Milroe and I see just a smaller, faster Anthony Richardson. Now, the difference for me is Jalen Milroe actually was a very effective, successful college quarterback. Anthony Richardson wasn't. He was never even that good in college. He was just, crazy talented and had crazy potential. Jalen Milroe has all of that. He's the fastest quarterback by far in this draft, probably one of the faster players in this draft. He's got a rocket for an arm. He is a smart kid. He's like one of those consistent SEC honor roll guys. He's actually, I think I heard he's going for his master's right now. Like, he's a great leader, great person, great kid, and has unbelievable potential. Now, if he goes to just about anywhere else, I don't think they're able, like if the Giants try to trade up and draft him, or if they draft him in the second round, I don't think he's good. Or if, even though I think Kevin Stefanski is a pretty good coach, if the Browns did the same, I don't think he's that good. If anybody other than Sean McVay or, a Kevin O'Connell maybe, I don't think that they're able to get the most out of Jalen Milroe and turn him into a franchise quarterback. But if Sean McVay likes him and thinks that he can do it, can you imagine? My Lord, that would be. And obviously, one big important factor here is he would not be expected to play right away. He would get to sit for at least 1 year behind Matthew Stafford, barring some injury, but he would not be expected to play right away. He would get the Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love sort of treatment where, he gets to sit and learn behind an established, proven, successful veteran and be coached by an outstanding offensive-minded head coach. I mean, I love this possibility, and I hope it happens. Now, I know I said that you're supposed to predict what they will do and not what you want to see or what they should do, but, I looked at the board and I thought about the possibilities here, and I just fell in love with the possibility of this. So I'm giving the Rams Jalen Milroe at 26. All right, I got to speed along a little bit. Let me take a quick break, and then we'll do the last few picks. Alrighty, friends, welcome back. So one thing that you may have noticed here that I don't know that's happened in my mock draft that probably really won't happen in the real draft, but it might because of the talent and the needs and whatever, is a position that has become one of the premium positions in the NFL and is starting to maybe even overtake the value and importance of an edge rusher, is an interior pass rusher, an interior defensive lineman. And so far, I think we've only seen one taken in this mock draft, and that's because it really seems like there's only one who's seems like a blue chip kind of guy, and that's the Mason Graham from Michigan. But there are some really good ones that I honestly believe, even though, I put this together, I think some of them will go sooner than this. But I'll just go ahead and tell you we're about to see a run on some of them. At number 27, the Ravens take the one that I think is the second best in this draft, and that's Walter Nolan. Started at Texas A&M, was a 5-star recruit, transferred to Ole Miss, just potential through the roof. There might be some character concerns there, but Walter Nolan honestly just seems like a Raven to me. I mean, you put him up there with that, on that front, like that is just, he just makes sense as a Raven. I mean, it just makes all the sense in the world to me. Then at 28, we have the Lions sort of thinking along the same lines. They need to improve on defense. They need to improve their pass rush. And so they take Derek Harmon, the defensive lineman out of Oregon, who is another, if you want to call it 3 technique, whatever. But, a guy who can get after the passer and push the pocket from the interior, who's also really good against the run, who a lot of people, I think, have as the second best defensive lineman in the draft, although it's close. I think the Lions would be very happy if he fell to them there at 28. And then at number 29, this is one I wasn't totally sure about, but then once I started looking, it just made sense. Emeka Egbuka, a reliable, versatile receiver. Give that to Jaden Daniels to go alongside Terry McLaurin, and now he's finally got another good, reliable receiver to go alongside Scary Terry, and that Washington offense could just take another step forward next year. Then we're moving to number 30, and the run on defensive linemen resumes, and we've got the other guy from Michigan, that's Kenneth Grant. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't know that much about him. His teammate's the one who really got most of the attention, and I'm wary of guys like this who their teammate eats up all the blocks, and so they're able to, might be able to do more than they would otherwise. But I think given the value and the position and the need, I think it's the Buffalo Bills would put him alongside Ed Oliver, and then that could, if he turns out to be pretty good, that could be an unstoppable duo. I mean, quarterbacks would be, all of the quarterbacks in that division would then be in peril, and their pockets collapsing. Because you have 2 guys who can push the pocket like that on the interior. And again, I don't know that much about him. I'm just making assumptions. But I assume if he's considered to be, which he is considered to be, first-round pick, that he's probably pretty good against the run too. But, you add him alongside Ed Oliver, and it's a position of need for a Super Bowl contending team. And, it makes a lot of sense to me. Moving on to the 31st pick in the draft, the Super Bowl runner-up Kansas City Chiefs. This is another one that just made all the sense in the world, and I think they would be thrilled if things fell this way. Obviously, their biggest need, they have to protect Patrick Mahomes. And so Josh Simmons is a guy that I think should go higher than this, and had it not been for an injury, would certainly go higher than this. In fact, had it not been for the injury, he very well might be the first offensive lineman taken in this draft. This is a guy who's as good as any offensive lineman tackle, regardless of position, in this draft. He truly is. But he had the injury, and that really held him back, and that's going to cause him to fall in the draft. And if he manages to fall in the laps of the Kansas City Chiefs, I think they would be thrilled, and I think he would be Patrick Mahomes' new best friend and their left tackle of the future, and one of the biggest problems for this team would immediately be solved. And then, finally, for the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, I'm going a similar route. We know how important it is, the trenches are to them, and since there aren't any Georgia defenders here that are, on the board that are projected to be for, early first, late, or early second or late first round picks, I'm going to give them the best guard and the best pure guard in the draft, and that's Tyler Booker out of Alabama. They always want to continue to build the offensive and defensive lines. This is a situation where he has versatility to play anywhere along that line, and it's given how they play, and it just makes sense. And I think they would be very happy if the best pure guard in the draft fell in their laps as well. All right, friends, I'm going to take one more quick break, and then we'll close things out. Alrighty, friends, welcome back. So thank you for listening in to my mock draft 1 week before the start of the draft, 1 week before round 1. Excuse me. As I said, I will continue to try to put more on the YouTube channel. I'll try to do it. I figure I'll maybe find time to do one more good mock draft and put it on the YouTube channel between now and then. It's still just 1 week left, but we know how quickly things can change, and things will change between now and then. Maybe Aaron Rodgers signs, maybe There's a trade for Kirk Cousins. Maybe a guy gets caught smoking a bong on video before the draft. There's still a lot that could happen between now and then. So I'll try to do at least one more and hopefully get it on the YouTube channel between now and then. I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. I hope you have a fantastic Thursday and Friday. I'll talk to you again soon. Love you. Bye.